Vexicammer gripped the edges of her containment pod as it jostled through what felt like an atmospheric entry. Her copper-hued skin glistened with perspiration, muscles tensing against the restraints that held her powerful frame. The crimson hair that marked her as Kralosian royalty had been roughly shorn during her capture, leaving just enough length for the fiery strands to curl against her neck. Diplomatic immunity, she whispered bitterly in her native tongue, knowing no one could hear her through the sealed chamber. 2 solar cycles ago, she'd been chief security attaché to the Kralosian ambassador. Now she was cargo. The rapid deceleration told her they'd landed. Heavy footfalls approached, and muffled voices speaking a language her neural translator struggled with surrounded her pod. She closed her amber eyes, regulating her breathing as her warrior training demanded. When they opened the pod, she would be ready. But the pod didn't open. Instead, she felt herself being lifted, carried, and loaded onto another transport. Hours passed before the movement stopped. Then came the sound of an auction. She recognized the cadence from intergalactic markets she'd visited during diplomatic missions. Numbers being called, excitement building, finally a concluding chime. She had been sold. Darius Parker checked the transaction confirmation on his tablet one more time, still unable to believe his luck. The Exotic Botanical Exposition had listed a rare specimen from the Krylos system in their final lot. As Earth's leading xenobotanist specializing in medicinal applications of non-terrestrial flora, he'd bid his entire research grant on the assumption it contained the legendary Kralosian fire fern, a plant rumored to contain compounds that could revolutionize neurology. Delivery confirmation, Dr. Parker announced the automated system in his laboratory. Package requires biometric verification for unsealing. Darius ran a hand through his dark curls, adjusting his glasses as he crossed to the receiving bay. The cylindrical pod was larger than he expected, nearly 2 meters long and a meter in diameter. Its surface bore unfamiliar symbols that certainly weren't the standard botanical classification system. Strange packaging for a plant specimen, he muttered, placing his palm on the verification panel. The pod hissed as atmosphere equalized. Slowly, the top portion dematerialized, revealing not the anticipated exotic plant, but a woman. No, not a woman, Darius realized with a shocked inhale. A Kralosian female. Her copper skin caught the laboratory lights, gleaming like polished metal. Though he'd only seen Kralosians in news broadcasts about interstellar relations, he recognized the distinctive features. The slightly elongated cranium, the small ridges tracing her jawline, the amber eyes now wide open and focusing directly on him with predatory intensity. Before Darius could process what was happening, she moved with astonishing speed. One moment she was lying in the pod. The next, she had him pinned against his laboratory wall, her forearm pressing against his throat with just enough pressure to make her point without crushing his windpipe. "Where am I?" she demanded, her English heavily accented but clear. "Who are you?" "Earth, Seattle, my lab," Darius gasped. "I'm Dr. Darius Parker. I thought I was buying a plant." Her amber eyes narrowed, studying his face for deception. "A plant?" Something like dark humor flickered across her features. "The traffickers have evolved their marketing, it seems." She eased the pressure on his throat but didn't release him. Up close, Darius could see the intricate patterns in her irises, the small scars on her copper skin that told stories he couldn't read. She was taller than him by several centimeters, her body a testament to a lifetime of physical conditioning. "I was to be your property," her question carried a dangerous edge. "No, God no, trafficking sentient beings is illegal on Earth. This was supposed to be a botanical auction." Darius swallowed hard. "I'm a scientist, not a whatever you're thinking." Vex's nostrils flared slightly, an ancestral adaptation for detecting deception through pheromones. The human appeared to be telling the truth, his fear smelled genuine but lacked the acrid notes of guilt. She stepped back, releasing him but maintaining a fighting stance. Her gaze swept the laboratory, assessing threats and exits. The room was filled with plants from dozens of worlds, sophisticated equipment, and data terminals, not the lair of a slaver or collector of exotic beings. "I am Vexicammer of the Kralosian Security Forces," she finally said, the formal introduction feeling bizarrely out of place yet necessary. "I was abducted during a diplomatic mission to the Centauri outpost." Darius straightened his lab coat, mind racing through interstellar protocols and Earth's legal obligations. "I'll contact the authorities immediately. The Interstellar Relations Bureau can arrange your return." "No," Vex's sharpness startled them both. She composed herself before continuing. "The traffickers have connections in official channels. That's how they captured me in the first place." Their eyes met, a moment of perfect understanding passing between them. She was stranded on an unfamiliar planet, he was involved in something far beyond his expertise, and neither had any reason to trust the other. Yet somehow they needed to. Then I guess you'll be staying here, Darius said quietly, until we figure this out. Vexa's posture remained rigid, but something in her amber eyes softened almost imperceptibly. For the first time since her capture, she faced an unknown future that wasn't solely defined by threat. This human, with his transparent expressions and talk of plants, was an enigma she hadn't expected. And she couldn't stop staring at him. 3 days into their unexpected arrangement, Darius awoke to the sound of breaking glass. He bolted upright in bed, heart racing as he remembered his houseguest. Pulling on a shirt, he rushed to the kitchen to find Vexa standing amid shattered ceramic, her powerful frame tense with frustration. "Your drinking vessels are fragile," she stated, not apologizing. She wore the clothes he'd provided, athletic where that strained against her muscular physique, the gray fabric contrasting with her copper skin. "They're called mugs," Darius replied, carefully stepping around the mess. "And yes, they break when dropped from Krylosian height." He reached for a broom, watching her from the corner of his eye. After their initial confrontation in his lab, he'd brought her to his home on the outskirts of Seattle, where the dense forest provided both privacy and a natural barrier against unexpected visitors. Vexa observed his cleaning technique with analytical interest. "On Krylos, our vessels are made from volcanic glass, unbreakable." She knelt suddenly, picking up the larger pieces with surprising delicacy for hands trained in combat. "Careful, you might," Darius winced as she sliced her finger. But instead of blood, a metallic-looking amber fluid beaded on her copper skin. She stared at the injury with detachment. "Your atmospheric composition accelerates our healing. It will seal within minutes." Darius couldn't help his scientific curiosity. "The copper tone of your skin, is it an adaptation to your planet's radiation levels?" "It's an evolutionary response to Krylos's twin suns." She straightened, depositing the ceramic fragments into the disposal unit. "Your fascination with my physiology, is it professional or personal, Dr. Parker?" Darius felt heat rise to his cheeks. "Professional, mostly. I study how different life forms adapt to their environments." "And yet you refuse to adapt to mine," she countered, gesturing to the security measures he'd implemented, interior locks on sensitive equipment, outgoing communications routed through encrypted channels. "Trust is earned," he replied quietly, "on both sides." The tension between them stretched, then unexpectedly Vexa's expression softened. "You are not what I expected from a human." "I could say the same about you," Darius admitted. "The few Krylosians who have visited Earth were diplomatic officials who kept to themselves. The media portrays your people as stoic warriors." "We are warriors," she confirmed, moving to the window to study the misty forest outside. "But we're not mindless fighters. Our strength serves our intellect." Darius watched her silhouette against the morning light, struck by the elegant lines of her elongated cranium and the subtle ridges along her jawline. Despite her alien features, or perhaps because of them, he found her beautiful in a way that defied human standards. "I've prepared the guest room properly now," he said, changing the subject. "The sleeping platform should support your density better with the reinforcements." Vexa turned, amber eyes glinting with what might have been amusement. "You mean I won't break another bed?" "That's the hope." Darius couldn't help but smile at the memory of her crashing through his spare bed frame the first night, her embarrassment quickly masked by warrior pride. Later that afternoon, Darius worked in his home laboratory while Vexa exercised in the clearing behind the house. He tried to focus on cataloging botanical samples, but his attention kept drifting to the window where he could see her moving through complex martial forms, her body flowing with lethal grace. When she finished, she caught him watching and approached the open door, perspiration giving her copper skin an almost luminous quality. "Your world has lighter gravity than Krylos. It makes me feel buoyant." "Is that good or bad?" Darius asked, setting aside his work. "Different." She paused, studying the plants surrounding him. "These specimens, they're from my quadrant of the galaxy." Darius nodded, surprised by her interest. "Several are from systems near Krylos. This one," he indicated a blue-tinged succulent, "supposedly comes from your planet's southern continent." Vexa approached, her fingers hovering over the plant without touching it. "Rakiri moss, our healers use it for treating nerve damage." For the first time, genuine emotion colored her voice, a homesickness she couldn't quite conceal. Something shifted between them in that moment. Darius saw not an alien warrior or an accidental acquisition, but a woman far from home, maintaining dignity in an impossible situation. Vexa saw not a captor or naive scientist, but a man trying to navigate unfamiliar waters with integrity. "I could use some help classifying these specimens," Darius offered carefully. "Your knowledge would be valuable." Vexa met his eyes, searching for ulterior motives but finding none. "Knowledge exchange is acceptable," she finally said. "I will assist you." She pulled up a stool beside him, closer than she'd allowed herself before. As they worked together, the air between them changed, still charged, but with something more complex than suspicion. Darius explained Earth's botanical classification systems while Vexa corrected his pronunciation of Krylosian terms. Neither mentioned how often their eyes met, or how their fingers occasionally brushed over specimens, each contact sending an unexpected current through them both, a chemistry transcending the vast differences of their worlds. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Darius's greenhouse had transformed. What began as Vexa simply identifying familiar plants had evolved into a sophisticated collaboration, with the Krylosian warrior applying her people's botanical knowledge to Earth's cultivation methods. Together, they'd created a hybrid growing system that was yielding remarkable results. The Rakiri moss has doubled its growth rate, Darius noted, adjusting his tablet's readings as Vexa misted the blue-tinged plant with a specialized nutrient solution she'd formulated. At this rate, we could propagate enough for preliminary pharmaceutical testing within months instead of years. Vexa hummed in agreement, a sound that resonated deeper than human vocal cords could produce. On Krylos, we would perform the ritual of gratitude for such bounty. Her copper fingers brushed the moss with unexpected tenderness. We believe plants respond to intention as much as to physical care. Show me, Darius said, setting his tablet aside. Vexa hesitated, then placed her palms on either side of the plant without touching it. She began a low melodic chant in her native language, the complex syllables creating harmonics that seemed to vibrate the very air around them. Darius watched mesmerized as her usual warrior rigidity melted into fluid movement. Her crimson hair, now growing out from its cropped state, caught the sunlight filtering through the greenhouse glass, creating a halo effect around her elongated features. When she finished, the silence felt charged with something indefinable. "That was beautiful," Darius said quietly. "What were the words?" "We thank the life form for its sacrifice to advance knowledge and promise to honor that sacrifice through wise use of what we learn." She straightened, looking almost embarrassed by the display of her culture's spiritual side. "Your scientists would call it superstition." "Not this scientist," Darius smiled. "I've spent enough time with plants from across the galaxy to know there's more to life than what our instruments can measure." Their eyes met, the moment stretching between them until Vexa abruptly turned away. "Your world has many contradictions," she said, moving to the watering station. "Your species creates weapons capable of planetary destruction, yet you individually dedicate years to nurturing single species of plants." "Humans contain multitudes," Darius replied, following her. "What about Krylosians? You're known as fearsome warriors, yet you perform rituals honoring tiny moss plants." Vexa's amber eyes flashed. Strength and respect are not opposing forces. To understand the value of life, one must be prepared to defend it. "Is that why you became a security officer, to defend life?" She considered his question with characteristic thoroughness. "I was born into the warrior caste. My path was predetermined, but my commitment to it was my choice." She tested the soil moisture of a fern-like specimen. "And you, why does a human male choose plants over the pursuit of dominance typical of your gender?" Darius laughed. "That's a pretty reductive view of human males." "Your global power structures suggest otherwise," she countered, the hint of a smile playing at her lips. "Fair point." He adjusted the greenhouse temperature controls. "I guess I've always felt more connected to growing things than to climbing corporate ladders. Plants don't lie or manipulate, they just respond to how you treat them." "Like all intelligent life forms," Vexa observed. That evening, Darius cooked dinner while Vexa experimented with Earth's musical instruments. She discovered his old guitar days ago and shown remarkable aptitude for it, her strong fingers mastering chord structures with ease. The melody she played was hauntingly beautiful, distinctly alien yet emotionally resonant. "That's lovely," Darius said, placing a plate of vegetarian stir-fry before her. Krylosians were omnivores like humans, but her dietary preferences leaned toward plant proteins. "It's a variation on a Krylosian coming-of-age song." She set the guitar aside. "The frequencies aren't quite right with Earth instruments, but the emotional essence translates." "Music might be universal that way," Darius mused, taking the seat across from her. Math and feeling intertwined. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the tension of their first days together replaced by something approaching companionship. Vexa had stopped constantly assessing escape routes. Darius had ceased locking away potential communication devices. "I accessed your information networks today," Vexa announced casually. Darius nearly choked on his food. "You what?" "Your security encryption is primitive." She speared a piece of tofu with precise movements. I needed to understand more about human social structures and potential trafficking networks that might be monitoring for my presence. Instead of anger, Darius felt a strange pride in her resourcefulness. Find anything useful. Several concerning patterns in shipping manifests that might indicate trafficking routes. She paused, studying his reaction. And I found images of Krylosian dignitaries visiting your United Nations. It was comforting to see my people even in digital form. The vulnerability in her admission touched something deep in Darius. On impulse, he reached across the table, his fingers stopping just short of her copper hand. We'll find a way to get you home, Vexa, I promise. She stared at his outstretched hand, then slowly, deliberately bridged the gap, her copper fingers intertwining with his. The contact sent an electric current through them both, her higher body temperature making her touch feel like warm metal left in sunlight. Your biochemistry is fascinating, Vexa whispered, her scientific observation belied by the intensity of her gaze. When our skin connects, my neural pathways respond in patterns typically reserved for Krylosian compatibility testing. Darius swallowed hard. Is that a good thing? It is unprecedented. Her thumb traced a small circle on his wrist where his pulse jumped beneath the skin. Our species are not supposed to be compatible in this way. Maybe the universe has more imagination than our scientists, Darius suggested, voice rough with unfamiliar emotion. Neither pulled away as night fell outside, their joined hands on the table between them forming a bridge across galaxies of difference. The Krylosian embassy has finally responded, Darius announced, entering the greenhouse where Vexa was carefully cross-pollinating specimens. After 6 weeks together, they'd established a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural, working together during daylight hours, sharing meals, and talking late into the night about their vastly different worlds. Vexa's head snapped up, amber eyes widening. You contacted them when? 3 days ago, I used a secure academic channel through the Interstellar Botanical Exchange. He approached her workstation, tablet in hand. They're sending a diplomatic shuttle. You can go home, Vexa. He expected joy relief. Instead, her copper features hardened into the warrior mask he hadn't seen in weeks. Who exactly responded to your message? She asked, her voice suddenly formal. Deputy Ambassador Cruxthal. He said they've been searching for you since your disappearance. Darius studied her reaction with growing concern. What's wrong? Isn't this good news? Vexa carefully set down her pollination tools. Cruxthal was under investigation for corruption before my abduction. He was the last person I communicated with before I was taken. She moved to the greenhouse computer terminal. I need to see the exact message. As Darius pulled up the correspondence, a distant sound caught Vexa's attention, her heightened Krylosian hearing detecting what human ears could not. Down, she shouted, tackling Darius to the floor seconds before the greenhouse windows shattered inward. Armed figures in dark uniforms poured through the openings, weapons trained on them. Target located, one of the intruders announced in accented English. Secure the Krylosian female, terminate the human. Vexa's body transformed into a weapon, the warrior training she maintained daily unleashed with lethal efficiency. She flipped a metal workbench, creating cover for Darius, then launched herself at the nearest attacker. Stay down, she ordered Darius as she disarmed one assailant and used his weapon against his companions. Darius watched in stunned amazement as Vexa moved with impossible speed, her copper skin deflecting glancing blows that would have incapacitated a human. She fought with the precision of someone protecting what was precious, not merely saving herself. When one attacker circled behind toward Darius's position, Vexa's reaction was instantaneous. She abandoned her advantageous position to intercept the threat, taking a glancing energy blast to her shoulder in the process. The wound seared her copper skin black, but she didn't falter, neutralizing the attacker with a complex grappling maneuver. The communication was traced, she gasped, pulling Darius behind a more secure section of greenhouse wall as weapons fire destroyed his carefully cultivated specimens. This was a setup. Darius grabbed a container of experimental fertilizer from a nearby shelf. Cover your face, he warned, then hurled it toward the remaining attackers. The chemical reaction created a dense, acrid smoke, temporarily blinding their assailants. The tunnel, he coughed, pointing to a concealed entrance in the greenhouse floor, an emergency exit he'd installed for fire safety. It leads to the cliffside. They descended into darkness, Vexa's enhanced vision guiding them through the narrow passage as sounds of pursuit echoed behind them. Darius sealed emergency bulkheads as they passed, buying precious minutes. When they emerged on the forested cliffside, night was falling. Vexa's wound glowed an alarming orange against her copper skin. You're injured, Darius said, reaching toward her shoulder. Secondary concern, she dismissed, scanning their surroundings. We need distance and a secure communication device. These were professional hunters. They'll have disabled all transmitters at your home. Why? Darius demanded as they moved swiftly through the underbrush. Why come after you now? Krylosian biology, Vexa explained tersely. Our genetic adaptability makes us valuable. Black market scientists pay fortunes for living specimens they can study and potentially weaponize. Her amber eyes met his in the fading light. You weren't supposed to keep me alive this long, just deliver me to a predetermined location. That's insane. I didn't even know what I was bidding on. A convenient cover story. Cruxthal must have arranged everything. The auction, your accidental purchase. Her expression softened momentarily. You truly didn't know, did you? Of course not. The hurt in his voice was unmistakable. They reached a small ranger station Darius knew was automated, equipped with emergency communications but rarely visited by humans. Breaking in, he activated the satellite uplink while Vexa secured the perimeter. We need to contact the actual Krylosian ambassador, she said, wincing as she finally allowed herself to acknowledge her injury. Ambassador Torlak was my direct superior. He can verify my identity and send legitimate extraction. As Darius worked on establishing a secure channel, Vexa finally sank onto a bench, the adrenaline of combat fading to reveal the severity of her wound. The blast had burned through muscle tissue, exposing the metallic-like substructure of her shoulder. You took that hit for me, Darius said quietly as he applied emergency first aid from the station's supplies. You could have escaped cleanly if you'd left me behind. Vex's amber eyes held his, something profound and unspoken passing between them. No, she said simply, I couldn't have. Her copper hand rose to touch his face, tracing the contours of his features as if memorizing them. In my culture, when a warrior chooses to shield another with their body, it is the deepest declaration of attachment. Darius's hands stilled on her wound. Attachment. A small smile curved her lips. Your language lacks precise terminology. The closest translation might be claiming of hearts. The communication console beeped, indicating an incoming secure transmission, the real Krylosian embassy responding to their emergency signal. But neither moved to answer it immediately, the space between them charged with something more urgent than escape. I need you to know, Vexa said, her warrior's directness leaving no room for ambiguity, that whatever happens when that transmission ends, my heart has made its choice across species, across worlds. Darius's response wasn't in words. He leaned forward, his lips meeting her copper ones in a kiss that defied all biological probability, yet felt like the most natural convergence in the universe. The Krylosian diplomatic vessel hovered above the Seattle shoreline, its iridescent hull reflecting the sunset in ripples of amber and gold, colors that reminded Darius painfully of Vex's eyes. 3 days had passed since their escape from the traffickers. 3 days of Krylosian security teams, Earth authorities, and interstellar diplomatic negotiations swirling around them, pulling them into separate debriefings and examinations. 3 days without a moment alone together. Darius stood at the edge of the designated landing zone, the wind from the ship's propulsion systems whipping his dark curls as he watched Ambassador Torlak descend the ramp. The distinguished Krylosian male, his copper skin bearing the deeper bronze tones of advanced age, moved with the same fluid strength that characterized Vex's movements. Dr. Parker, the ambassador greeted him with a formal bow. My people owe you a profound debt for protecting chief security attaché Kammer. She protected me as much as I protected her, Darius replied honestly. Where is she? Completing final medical treatments aboard our vessel. Her injuries were significant, though not life-threatening thanks to your prompt care. The ambassador's expression shifted subtly. We've confirmed that Deputy Ambassador Cruxthal was indeed orchestrating a trafficking operation, selling information about Krylosian movements to hunters. He has been apprehended. Good, Darius said, though his thoughts were elsewhere. When will Vexa Chief Attaché Kammer be finished with her treatments? Ambassador Torlak studied the human with experienced diplomatic perception. You care deeply for her. It wasn't a question, but Darius answered anyway, yes. Our societies have maintained careful distance for generations, Dr. Parker. Interspecies relationships are unprecedented. So I've been told, Darius said, a hint of defiance in his tone. But unprecedented doesn't mean impossible. The ambassador's features softened unexpectedly. No, it does not, he gestured toward the ship. She requested your presence aboard if you would follow me. Heart-pounding, Darius accompanied the ambassador up the ramp and into the Krylosian vessel. Unlike the sterile, utilitarian designs he'd expected, the interior featured organic curves and living plants integrated into every surface. The atmosphere was slightly warmer than Earth normal, with a subtle spiced scent that reminded him of the greenhouse when Vexa worked there. They arrived at what appeared to be a medical bay, where Vexa stood gazing out a viewport at the Earth below. Fully healed, dressed in the formal uniform of the Krylosian security forces, she looked both more alien and more beloved than ever. The crimson hair that had grown during her time on Earth was styled in a traditional Krylosian warrior's braid, accentuating the elegant elongation of her skull and the delicate ridges along her jawline. "Darius," she said, turning to face him, his name and her voice carrying a wealth of emotion that transcended language barriers. The ambassador discreetly withdrew, leaving them alone in the observation room. "Your shoulder," Darius asked, gesturing to where the energy weapon had burned her. Completely healed, she approached him with the controlled grace he'd come to cherish. "Our medical technology can regenerate tissue rapidly." They stood facing each other, the gulf between them both physical and cosmic, human and Krylosian, Earth and a distant world orbiting twin suns. "The ambassador has offered me reinstatement," Vexa said finally. "My position in the diplomatic security force awaits. My family has been notified of my recovery." Darius nodded, fighting to keep his expression neutral. "That's good news, you can go home." "Home," she repeated, testing the word as if searching for its true meaning. "I've been thinking about that concept extensively." She moved to a control panel, activating a holographic display between them. Images of Krylos appeared, a world of dramatic red canyons, copper-toned oceans, and soaring crystal cities. "This is where I was born," she said, her voice holding a complex mixture of love and distance. "My family compound is here," she indicated a sprawling structure nestled against a cliff face. "My training academy, my assigned quarters in the capital city, everything I've known is there." Darius forced himself to smile. "It's beautiful, I can see why you'd want to return." Vexa waved her hand through the hologram, dispersing it. "I've served the Krylosian diplomatic corps for 15 cycles. I've visited 17 different worlds, learned 12 languages, and mastered 8 different combat disciplines." Her amber eyes fixed on his. "But until I met you, I never questioned where I belonged." She reached for his hand, copper fingers intertwining with his pale ones, the gesture that had become their private language. "Ambassador Torlak has offered me a choice," she continued. "Reinstatement on Krylos, or a new assignment as cultural liaison to Earth, specifically to facilitate botanical knowledge exchange between our worlds." Darius's breath caught. "Here, you could stay here." "If that is what I choose." Her free hand rose to touch his face, tracing his features as she had in the ranger station. "My people value directness, so I will speak plainly. In the time we've shared, you have become essential to me in ways I never anticipated. The thought of returning to Krylos without you creates a void that no homecoming could fill." Darius turned his face to press a kiss into her palm. "I was trying to figure out how to ask if I could go with you," he admitted. "I was ready to leave Earth if it meant being where you are." A smile transformed Vex's features, the warrior's reserve melting into something radiant. "That would be a significant sacrifice. Your work, your world." "My work is studying life across the galaxy, and my world," he gestured toward the viewport where Earth hung in space. "It's expanding to include you wherever you are." Her smile deepened, revealing the slightly pointed canines that marked her carnivore ancestry. "Then perhaps we need not choose between worlds, but rather forge a path between them." She drew him closer, her higher body temperature enveloping him like a living flame. "The ambassador believes our relationship could strengthen interstellar relations, a biological research partnership between Earth and Krylos, with us as its foundation." "That sounds suspiciously like a blessing," Darius said, hardly daring to believe. "It is more than that," Vexa replied. "On Krylos, when a warrior chooses a life bond outside traditional paths, it requires official recognition. The ambassador has granted this." Her hands moved to unfasten a small emblem from her uniform, a copper starburst that she pressed into Darius's palm. "This marks you as Canorva to a Krylosian warrior. It means the one who guards my spirit while I guard their body." Darius closed his fingers around the emblem, emotion making speech difficult. Instead, he pulled her into an embrace that bridged the vast differences between their species, their foreheads touching in the traditional Krylosian gesture of intimate connection. "I have one condition," he finally said, voice rough with feeling. Vexa pulled back slightly, eyebrow ridge raised in question. "We rebuild the greenhouse together," Darius continued. "Half earth plants, half Krylosian, a botanical bridge between worlds." "With reinforced drinking vessels," she added, amber eyes sparkling with rare humor. As the diplomatic vessel prepared for departure, not to take Vexa home, but to formalize the new botanical research initiative before returning them both to Earth, they stood together at the viewport. Below them, the blue-green planet that had accidentally brought them together turned serenely in space. Above, the stars promised countless worlds to explore, countless discoveries to share. I was sold to a strange human man against my will, Vexa mused, her warrior's directness unchanged despite everything. By all logical probabilities, this should have ended in tragedy. Maybe the universe has been playing matchmaker across the galaxies, Darius suggested, drawing her copper hand to his lips. A fanciful theory without scientific merit, she replied with mock seriousness, then smiled, the expression still new on her warrior's face but growing more natural each day. But then again, the most significant discoveries often begin with improbable hypotheses. As Earth and stars wheeled around them, copper-skinned warrior and human scientist turned toward their shared future, a destiny neither could have imagined alone, but one they had chosen deliberately and completely together.